So it is not surprising that some would have us stay where we are a little longer, to rest, to wait. But this city of Houston, this state of Texas, this country of the United States was not built by those who waited and rested. But if I were to say, my fellow citizens, that we shall send to the moon 240,000 miles away from the control station in Houston, a giant rocket, the length of this football field, made of new metal alloys, some of which have not yet been invented, capable of standing heat and stresses several times more than have ever been experienced, fitted together with a precision better than the finest watch, carrying all the equipment needed for propulsion, guidance, control, communications, food, and survival, on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body, and then return it safely to Earth, re-entering the atmosphere at speeds of over 25,000 miles per hour, causing heat about half that on the temperature of the sun, almost as hot as it is here today, and do all this, and do all this, and do it right, and do it first.
Good evening, my fellow citizens. This government, as promised, has maintained the closest surveillance of the Soviet military buildup on the island of Cuba. Within the past week, unmistakable evidence has established the fact that a series of offensive missile sites is now in preparation.
The third presidential debate of 1960 was held on October 13th. Vice President Richard Nixon participated from Hollywood, California, of the election season. Like the previous debates, these final two were sponsored by the networks and were broadcast from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. The third debate earned a Nielsen rating of 63.7. The rating of the fourth was slightly lower. According to Gallup poll evidence, an estimated 85 million adults watched at least one of the four debates in 1960. Gallup's enthusiasm quotient ratings indicate that before the debates, 42% of those surveyed gave Republican Richard Nixon a highly favorable rating, as opposed to 36% who gave him this rating after the debates. Democrat John F. Kennedy earned the same rating of 43% both before and after the debates. On November 8th of that year, voters went to the polls and elected as president Senator John F. Kennedy. He won by a margin of nearly 0.2%.
F. Kennedy and incumbent Vice President Richard Nixon. The candidates took questions from a panel of journalists on U.S. policy toward Cuba, relations with the Soviet Union, combating the spread of communism, and civil rights in America. Senator Kennedy defeated Vice President Nixon in a close general election, with less than 1% of the popular vote separating the two. This hour-long debate took place in Washington, D.C.
This is Frank McGee, NBC News, in what, and if all the radio and television networks have agreed on these rules. Neither candidate will make an opening statement or a closing summation. Each will be questioned in turn. Each will have an opportunity to comment upon the answer of the other.
The debate took place in 1960 between Democratic Senator John Kennedy of Massachusetts and Republican Vice President Richard Nixon. Joel Swerdlow is an author and editor of the book Presidential Debates, 1988 and Beyond.
In the late 1950s, culminating in the 1960 debate, there was a plan devised to not have debates per se, but to come up with some kind of device, an event, that would get the three big commercial networks. You have to remember, this is obviously way before cable and satellite. This is when the three networks had almost all the national audience. To get some kind of device to get prime time, evening time, from the three networks. And that culminated in the Kennedy-Nixon debates. And if you go back from a historian's point of view and interview the participants and look at the documents, there really is very little that's said about the value of debates per se to further the public interest or to enhance the electoral process. It was getting on prime time.
There were 4 televised debates in 1960, each sponsored by the three networks and lasting a total of 60 minutes. The debates that year were broadcast on all three networks, as well as on the radio. Stephen Wayne is a political science professor at Georgetown University.
Each week until the 2016 election, Road to the White House Rewind brings you archival coverage of presidential races. Next, from the 1960 campaign, a West Virginia Democratic primary debate between Senators John F. Kennedy of Massachusetts and Hubert Humphrey of Minnesota. This was only the second televised presidential primary debate in history and took place at the WCHS-TV studios in Charleston. 5 weeks before the primary, polls showed Senator Kennedy trailing by 20 points, with